If you were in Roberto's position, what options you could do?
I think it's a difficult situation for him to be in. He's got pressures to try and get the best story ever, which is always the case. But inevitably, it's more important that he seeks out the truth, and if that's a less good story, then that's still the story he should go for. I can think of two examples where good, talented reporters, for whatever reason, felt impelled to push beyond the bounds of a story, and either invented or certainly seriously exaggerated the content, the quotes, in the hunt for the better story, and they got found out, and it was a pretty high penalty. They had to pay for it. So it's really almost never going to be worth the risk of going beyond the accepted limit of what is the truth, what is fair, what is just.
And the moral dilemma where Roberto was, there were two options: maintaining his integrity or picking up the story. Is it common to have this kind of dilemmas?
Yeah, I mean, it can be part of your daily life. I think you can go for glory, but it only lasts for a certain amount of time. Go down the integrity route. It might be less glamorous, it might have less sensation attached to it, but ultimately it will reward you, because your reputation is really pretty important as a journalist. Shortcuts don't pay off. When it came to the News of the World and phone hacking, the situation was so serious, the brand had become so toxic that the only effective way to deal with it was to kill off what was Britain's best-selling paper. Now that says something. There is a limit to what you can do, what is acceptable. You have to satisfy yourself that you've reached an acceptable level of verification. In other words, just because somebody tweets something, that doesn't make it true. But if you can have ideally a second source of something, and you trust those sources, I think that's acceptable.
And is it good practice, according to you, publish a story just with one source?
It depends who that source is. If it's somebody who's got an impeccable track record and you know that they've got no particular axe to grind, so it might be a whistleblower, for example. Their motive for bringing it into the public domain is genuine. You've done as much as you possibly can to verify it. Then in those extreme circumstances, a single source might be enough. But ideally, no, you'd want to have a second source. So it can happen. The examples of editors driving journalists, I think, is a less common situation.
Maybe can it happen that it's not explicit, but can be in an implicit way?
Yeah, that could be the case, and maybe that was a factor. And it is a competitive industry. There are no prizes for coming second. So no, I don't think there's this big, overwhelming pressure. I think sometimes it might be subtle, but it's usually done as a cooperative thing between the journalist and the editor, and both, to some extent, are working with their sources and the community as a whole. So it's a less than black and white dilemma, I think. If the reporter is too desperate, then the consequences could be pretty severe. The reader is trusting you, your editor is trusting you to be accurate. An editor can't check every single aspect of every single story. So it's not like there's a kind of criminal sanction awaiting you, but if you get a reputation for being, pushing it too far, being unreliable, being a bit dangerous, then that spreads out right across your work and your work with other people.